Securit inimicus illi vorenus et laboranti subvenet. A short sentence with an obvious subject, but then like a couple of weird things, where this word illi is definitely dative, this word laboranti is definitely dative, and my two verbs actually explain those datives. Securit means to come to the aid of somebody in the dative case, and subvenet also means to come to the aid of somebody in the dative case. Let's look. Securit, to run to the aid of. Subvenet. I like rescue for that one, so let's go with that. Inimicus goes with Vorenus, like his enemy Vorenus or his rival Vorenus comes to the aid of that man, or like comes to that guy's aid and rescues him toiling, or him struggling, or him as he struggles is a fine way to translate that present participle. You could also combine the whole thing and be like, his enemy Vorenus comes to the aid of and assists that man as he struggles, right? You can put it all together that way, but note that both those verbs as compounds often do take the dative case, illi and laboranti. Adhunc, right? Separate from the se is almost always the object of something. Confestim looks like an adverb. Apuloni, omnis multitudo, subject verb, right? The whole crowd turns itself, right? Or turns themselves immediately from pulo, right? Like ab pulone, to this man, right? So they've all been focusing their attention on the impeditum pulo, right? On pulo as he is hindered. But now Vorenus comes to his rescue, and the whole crowd, it's like zombies when they sense movement, right? Are turning their attention immediately from pulo to him, right? Turning themselves from pulo to Vorenus. Illum, that guy, probably the object. Veruto, we saw it earlier, right, as the verutum, arbitranter, ocisum, arbitranter must be like my subject and my verb. They think that the accusative illum, infinitive ocisum esse, they think that that guy was killed or has been killed by the spear, right? By the one that pierced him in his sword belt. They think that Pulo must be dead, and so they've turned their attention to this guy instead, right? Vorenus goes to help that guy. The Gauls turn towards this guy, Vorenus, because they think that that guy, Pulo, has been killed by the verutum. Gladio communis remgerit Vorenus atque uno interfecto reliquos Paulum propellit. Again, pretty simple sentences when you notice, right? Like your object, verb, and subject, and object, verb. Right, so Vorenus does a couple of things. He does the first thing, gladio communis, and he does the second thing, I don't know, uno interfecto. Grammatically, two different types of things there, but so like Vorenus manages the situation, right? Rem gerit. Vorenus handles things. He manages the situation. Gladio communis must be like with his sword. Communis looks like a perfect passive participle. It's not. It's like co-manus. It's an adverb that means hand to hand or something like that. Co-minus. In close combat, I really like. Vorenus is handling the situation in close combat with his sword, right? Because you only use your sword in close combat. Well, I guess you could use an even shorter sword, like your dagger. And with one having been killed, he drives away or drives the others back a little bit, right? He propels the rest of them a little bit. Dum cupidius instat. Instat's a great word. It's more Virgil sounding than Caesar, but like it's kind of like instigat, right? He presses hard, is close to the dative. It is in plus stat. But like while he presses on more eagerly, comparative adverb, having been like thrown down into a lower position, he can kiddits, right? He like falls having been cast into an inferior place. Huic, dative. To him, again, having been circumventoed, not having been circumventoed again, but like once more, to this man having been surrounded, verb, object, subject, pulo brings aid to the dative. This man having been surrounded. Oh man, now Pulo's helping Varanus, right? Varanus helped Pulo, and now Varanus is is cast down. He has fallen in locum inferiorum. So who's going to come to his rescue? But the guy the Gauls had turned away from because they thought he was dead. Pulo brings help to this man having been surrounded. And both of them, aque ambo, subject, and then an adjective in the nominative case, unharmed. Cum pluribus interfectis is almost a parenthetical ablative absolute with several having been killed. Summa cum laude, just like you want to graduate. Se object intra munitiones, the exact opposite of, where was it? Extra munitiones, right? Where Pulo proceeds outside of the fortifications. Now, both of them, unharmed, with several having been wounded, with the greatest praise, like receive themselves or bring themselves back inside or within the fortifications, or even like retreat within the fortifications. I don't know if we can properly call that a juxtaposition because we had extra munitiones and intra so far apart. But it is a nice dichotomy. It is a nice callback to earlier in the paragraph. So almost like a chiastic structure for the paragraph. Outside of the fortifications, Pulo is assisted by Varanus. Varanus is assisted by Pulo. And then the two of them together, not separately, not one after another, but together, retreat back inside the fortifications. And so Caesar ends it with a nice philosophical sort of way, right? Fortuna, sic in contentione et certamine, in contention and in struggle or in rivalry and competition, utrumque where sawit ita, like handled each of them in such a way, dealt with each man in such a way, really like turned for each man, turned each man, but really like managed each one, in rivalry and contest or struggle in such a way, right? It turned each man in such a way that one man, an inimicus alteri, right? Like one of them, a rival to the other, like was a source of help and salvation. Or that one man, a rival, was a source of help and salvation to the other. One to the other. An enemy was a help and salvation. That, of course, is dative, was a help and a salvation in the dative case to another dative. This is the dative of purpose, and this is the dative of reference. Those names don't matter as much as when they are together with a form of est, two different datives, we call that the double dative. And it's usually like a help or a hindrance to someone. So that one was, you would expect the nominative, auxilium and salus, but instead it was a dative to a dative. That one of them, an enemy, or that one enemy was a source of help and salvation to the other. Neque, and it wasn't diudicari posset, it wasn't able to be judged, it wasn't able to be decided. Which guy seemed preferable to which guy in courage, or which man seemed preferable to the other in courage or in bravery. Ante ferendus is like the future passive participle form of that verb ante feretur earlier, right? Like who would be preferred, and now it can't be decided who like ought to be preferred, but we'll just give it like the adjective translation as like seemed preferable, which seemed preferable to the other when it comes to virtue. The other word choice I want to point out is the use of inimicus when talking about Pulo and Varenus as each other's enemy, and note how different that is from our word for our military enemy, of course, was hostes, right? And that's Pulo throws his spear or his javelin at his enemies, the Gauls, and the Gauls then throw their spears at their enemy, being Pulo. So we have the use of hostis being from a Roman perspective, referring to Gauls, and from a Gallic perspective, referring to Romans. But Roman to Roman, we're not using hostis, we're using inimicus, which is the opposite of an amicus, right? It's an inamicus. So a nice choice of word. This is a really lovely story with good language within it, and some technical terms that we probably wouldn't remember out of context, like scutum, verutum, balteum, vagina, right? All of those in context are easy to figure out, and like our tella and our verutum or our what else did we have? Oh, pilum and tella, right? Those are weapon words that we've had before, but good storytelling.